Dear fellow time travelers, good morning. It's my great privilege to welcome you all to our event entitled Hello Futures. We're happy to be joined by numerous participants and looking forward to today's lectures and discussions. A warm welcome to our distinguished guests, keynote lecturers Ivica Mitrović and Oleg Šuran. I concluded the previous keynote lecture by Phil Balaktas with a quote by the American playwright John Guare. It's amazing how a little tomorrow can make up for a whole lot of yesterday. The thought perfectly encapsulates the goal of today's mission. We will focus on tomorrow, on possible futures. I would like to ask Petra Paušić now from the Regional Development Agency of the Ljubljana Urban Region for a short introduction.
Thank you, Barbara. Dear all, also I would like to give a warm welcome to all of you who join us today at the workshop. We are very pleased that you join us in such a big number. But before I pass the word to Ivica and Oleg, I would like to present you the project within which today's workshop is organized. This project is called COCO for CCI. This is the project supported by the European Union within the Interreg Central Europe program. The project is about cultural and creative industries and advanced manufacturing industries. It recognizes that cultural and creative industries bring fresh ideas, different perspectives, and are future-oriented. And also more and more advanced manufacturing industries recognize advantages that cultural and creative industries can offer them. However, linking those two up is not always easy. They have different way of thinking, different modus operandi, and many misunderstandings can appear. So a definite effort needs to be done in order to start and lead a fruitful cooperation. To draw the importance of the cooperation between the cultural and creative industries and advanced manufacturing industries, we use the brain, literally. Cultural and creative industries represent the right half of the brain, which is responsible for creativity, art, and intuition. And the advanced manufacturing industries are left half of the brain, which is responsible for logic and analytical thinking. Each of the halves is unique and priceless, but only together they form a whole. The best results come if they cooperate. The COCO for CCR recognizes that cooperation is more and more recognized as a driver of innovation, progress, and sustainable development. That is why it strives to foster this cooperation, raises awareness about its importance, and helps to overcome the obstacles that arise on the way. Within the COCO for CCI project, we also launched the Hello Futures, let's call it SAP project. It's a trilogy that looks in the future. It predicts that creatives and those who work with the advanced technologies need to face the global movement, strategic orientations, and the potentials of the future today. So Hello Futures focuses on the importance of reflecting on how the possible futures can be understood and, more importantly, co-created. In September 2012, we hosted a futurist Phil Balaktas that introduced us to the speculative design. Moreover, on our webpage, you can find examples of successful cooperation between cultural creative industries and advanced manufacturing industries. Today, we are concluding Hello Futures with this workshop. So Ivica and Oleg, I suggest we just start discovering the future.
Thank you, Petra. Before I give the floor to Ivica and Oleg, maybe just a few introductory words, because this brings us to the first part of our event titled Overview of the Practice, Past, Present, Future Context. And as I said, before I give the microphone to Ivica and Oleg, a few words about their biography. Ivica Mitrović is an assistant professor at the Department of Visual Communication Design at the Arts Academy in Split, Croatia, where he teaches interaction design and interactive media design. His current focus is tracking and developing new and emerging speculative design practices and educational methods as coordinator of the European Erasmus Plus project, Speculative Edu. On unrelated note, if today were February 29th, we would be celebrating Ivica's birthday. Curiously enough, his birthday decided to skip this year's calendar. So I wish you a merry missing birthday, Ivica.
Thank you.
Oleg Šuran is an associate and teaching assistant for visual communications and interaction design at the Arts Academy, University of Split. Oleg is a renowned and award-winning Croatian interaction design practitioner. Both Ivica and Oleg were selected as curators for the presentation of the Republic of Croatia at the 21st International Exhibition of the Triennale di Milano, titled The 21st Century, Design After Design. So without further ado, I give you Ivica and Oleg.
Thank you very much for this invitation and the possibility to be the second time here at Hello Future after this nice introduction with Phil in September. And also thank you everyone for choosing to spend this morning with us. It's going to be quite a long morning, so I will just start immediately with the presentation. As you said before, we are coming from the Adriatic coast, and I think Adriatic is something which really shaped our work here at Arts Academy in Split. I'm coming from Split, Oleg from Pula. We both now speaking from our homes in Split. Oleg is now also in Split. And we will talk about speculative design based or via our practice, research, and educational experience, especially from the viewpoint of the speculative edu. I think really nice and really productive European project I'm leading for more than last 2 years, more than 2 years. And this event is going to be divided in two parts. First one, which is dealing with past, present, and future of the practice, and second one will be more concrete, dealing with approach, methods, tools via selected case studies. I will carry this presentation, and from time to time I will just pass the word or just ask Oleg to help me with some of the issues, or maybe to start any kind of discussion.
No chance, no way. You'd be great, you and Ralph.
Don't know if I could have a kid in a world like this.
Oh, that's happy, thanks.
Really though, it is like that Rook woman said.
Things were okay a few years ago, before 2008. Do you remember back then we used to think politics was boring?
Those were the days.
But now, I worry about everything. I don't know what to worry about first. Never mind the government. It's the sodding banks. They terrify me. And it's not even them. It's the companies, the brands, the corporations. They treat us like algorithms while they go around poisoning the air and the temperature and the rain. And don't even start me on ISIS. Well, now we've got America. Never thought I'd be scared of America in a million years, but we've got fake news and false facts. I don't even know what's true anymore. What sort of world are we in? Because if it's this bad now, what's it going to be like for you? Huh? 30 years' time? 10 years? 5 years? What's it going to be like?
This is from 2019. It's a BBC serial, Years and Years, which follows a turbulent part, 15 years in the future of one British family. And here one of the main characters talk about how we have lost our faith in the future. With this so-called slow cancellation of the future, our future has been colonized by the dominant economic model. And sadly, we have lost our ability to imagine alternatives, what is possible, what is probable, what is desirable. And this introduction was from my 2019 lecture, and the title of lecture was Life After Disaster. And so what now? We are already living in what may look like a dystopian future. But first, let's little bit back in the past. Design as a driver of modernism, since its rapid growth during the last century, mostly played uncritical supporting role to the industry and the application of technology. Today, globalization and new technologies, big data, Internet of Things, smart city, biotechnology provide great possibilities in context of which design is a fundamental distinctive element of new product system and services developed in such context, which may have dramatic consequences on the society. For example, the concepts such as Uber or Airbnb are definitely based on the design approach. In design, there is services and experiences. And in a short time, they have shocked economic, legal, and labor system in many cities and countries around the world. Design also had its role in the building of so-called Anthropocene, or better to say, Capitalocene time, which is more than ever in human history, open possibilities for extreme catastrophic scenarios. We are talking about near future scenarios. Pre-2020 time was a time that brought back modernistic myths about the revolutionary role of design as a discipline that would change the world. We were witnessing daily new design competitions focusing on finding solutions for the biggest international problems. A number of designers believe that new disasters creates new opportunities for designers. It looks that designers were only ones capable of stopping this cycle of capitalism. But most of the times, those projects bringing approaches that intend to resolve problems, they have resulted from the technological development with new innovations that in most cases results in design and production of another new technologies. Such a phenomena we described as a Western melancholy, the process in which designers focus on the consequences of the current situation instead of dealing with the causes of particular problem. These projects are projects that carry the idea about genius creative person or scientists who are only one possessing the necessary knowledge and wisdom and who are going to save, of course, via innovation and technology, the planet from self-destruction. Such colossal and mythical projects use the same rhetoric and ideology of the past centuries, as well terms like conquest, colonization, and so on. Western melancholy can be also observed in the mainstream Hollywood production. For example, blockbuster Geostorm, I think it's 2018, where network of satellites around the planet, again, new technology, controls the climate change of the planet. Geostorm is just one of the many movies dealing with climate change, produced at the mainstream level during the last decade, where a human mythical hero or scientist saves the planet. This imaginary of future are not so unexpected if you look into today's education, which is based on the hyper-techno-optimism. This worldview is rooted in a number of dogmas. For example, that human evolved from the observer into creator, and in the name of progress and growth, he can change environment. And the consequences of human activity is going to be resolved by means of science and technology anyway. We can understand the Western melancholy as the ultimate consequences of accepting our incapability to stop devastation of the environment that is only possible by transforming the social and economic model responsible for those problems. However, as reaction, designers started to practice different approaches to design, moving from dominant perception and conventional design practices, rethinking the role of technology in our everyday lives, focusing on implications rather than applications of technology. They're speculating about new technological as well social, economic, and political futures. They speculate how new technologies will change our life when it comes to our homes. They're thinking about how domestication of technology, when this new technology came to our homes, will change our lives. They think about implications, not just linearly about application of some new and emergent technology. Speculative design practice, it's one of the most significant examples of such a new design practice, which is expanding the critical practice toward imagination and diverse vision of the future scenarios. It is rooted in so-called English critical design, or just critical design, which was introduced in the late 1990s by Anthony Dunn and Fiona Raby via their design practice and educational activities at the London Royal College of Art. They were presented on the left side, so-called traditional or affirmative design practice, and on the right side of this diagram, they introduce critical design as a way of questioning traditional, or how they call it, affirmative design practice. We can say that Italian radical practice is a major historical, or radical practice in architecture and design in general, is the major historical reference of the speculative design practice. In the same way as radical design confronted high modernism as a dominant ideology of that time by focusing on the social issues and rethinking the profession, new speculative design practices today attempt to confront dominant consumeristic ideology. Speculative practice is dealing with the notion what is preferable and for whom is preferable future. This is FutureCon, one of the most important, or maybe let's say fundamental tools for the speculative designers, but not only for the speculative designers, also for people who are dealing with the future. And it's this diagram, which is called the FutureCon. It shows like on the left side today time or present, on the right side future. And it is cone because it shows that the future is not linear, it's not one-dimensional, that future is multidimensional. So on the right end of the cone, you can see all possible future which could develop from the present moment. And we are trying to think, or trying to reflect, or trying to speculate what is preferable, what is probable, what is possible future. So for whom the future is preferable? For corporation, for industry, for government, or for us, for the citizens? And who owns the future? It is speculative design practices related to the series of similar practices. We can see just a few of them here. As I mentioned before, critical design, design fiction, radical design, discursive design, transition design, and so on. I will show you now one project. The name of the project is Pink Chicken project from 2019, just to give you like a short overview or short insight what is one speculative design project looks like, for example.
Pink Chicken project suggests changing the colour of the entire species, Gallus domesticus, to pink. Why? Human actions have altered the Earth so profoundly that we have entered a new geological epoch, the Anthropocene. The stability of the biosphere is threatened, with an uncomfortably high probability of an uninhabitable planet within the next century. This devastation will leave traces in the strata for geologists of the future. such as plastic pollution, soot from power stations, nuclear fallout, and surprisingly, the fossilized bones of the global proliferation of the domestic chicken. The bones of the 60 billion chickens that we kill every year leave a geographically widespread, stratigraphically restricted, and morphologically distinct trace in the strata. To reoccupy this identifier of our age, we will genetically modify a chicken with pink bones and feathers, using a gene from the insect cochineal to produce a pigment that will be fossilized when combined with the calcium of the bone. And with the recently invented CRISPR gene drive technique, 100% of the offspring of our genetically modified pink chicken will inherit our modifications. Planting eggs at chicken farms around the world, the pink gene is estimated to reach all chicken in just 12 to 19 generations, thus permanently altering the entire species, Gallus domesticus, and colouring the stratum of the Anthropocene pink. The chicken also carries a message in its DNA, encoded into A's, T's, G's, and C's, a time capsule readable for thousands of years. We, the humans of planet Earth, write this message at the beginning of the Anthropocene. The current devastation of the planet is not the result of activities undertaken by the whole species Homo sapiens. Instead, it derives from a small group of humans in power. We urge you to fight this oppression, for it enables and aggravates the anthropocentric violence forced upon the non-human world. Sent in hope that you have reimagined us as a biological organism. Help us accelerate this effort by ordering your own pink egg. The traces of humanity is no longer in the hands of Monsanto and DuPont, the radiation of nuclear bombs or the oil spills of ExxonMobil, but also in yours.
This is project from Non-Human Nonsense Design Studio or design partners. And what we have here in this project, we have first speculations about possible futures. We have fiction and satire presented via narrative story, but we have also artifacts and exhibition environment. And we have at the end, because projects end up in the United Nations in the United Nations building, at the end, a kind of sparkling discussion which was initiated from this project. And slowly, in this almost 20 years of the history of the practice, speculative design became very much in fashion. More and more designers embraced speculative and related design approaches in their everyday practice. More and more studios were producing visions of the future technological scenarios. More and more companies were employing designers to imagine future trends. There were more and more mainstream conferences and exhibitions. When I say mainstream, I mean which is focused on the broad public, not only on the experts, which is dedicated to the future and they are related to the speculative design practice. And also we are witnessing an increasing number of educational programs based on the speculative practice as a tool for changing the future. For potential students, there are high places for studying. However, speculative design were also confronted with the strong criticism, which is based on the viewpoints that is separated from the real world, that is based only in the galleries, that is coming from the privileged Western perspective, because speculative design came and is coming first from the UK and then from the other Western European countries and United States, of course. And also they look the salvation in the dystopia scenarios. So that projects are not trying to change the future now. They are most of the time looking like disasters as a new starting point for their scenarios. They are not struggling with the problem which is now and here. And science fiction has always been a great inspiration within design practice, with a long history of creating imaginary scenarios, worlds, and characters. However, visions of the future also served as a tool in the hands of the big corporations in realization of their preferable futures, which are usually built around corporation technologies. One of the best known examples is this one, 1939 New York World Exhibition, and this General Motors presentation, which is called Futurama, which was designed by one of the pioneers of American industrial design, Norman Bell Gates, representing the visions of American city of the future. This was in 1930. The vision of the city was the city from 1960s. And this city, the future was not designed to suit humans, but cars and highways, product of the General Motors Corporation. This, let's say, corporative fetishization of technology dictate the role of the technology in the society. This is IBM presentation at another World Fair, now we are in the 60s, 1964, designed by Charles and Alexandra Ames, which was focused on artificial intelligence. Why artificial intelligence in 1960? Because it was technology developed in the Cold War times. And via this warfare, this technology was seeking for its new market position, its new life. And similar rhetoric is visible nowadays almost every day, mostly and again used by the big corporations and mostly, of course, from the IT world. Keywords such as safety, optimization, efficiency, speed, and similar are used as a corporate visions of the future built around their new technology. Technology is always working perfectly. There are no bugs. There are no any kind of problems. And those visions of the future are entirely dehumanized. People here are the props of technology. But luckily, future scenarios presented in a film and TV production include criticism and offer much more fun. This is called TV series The Twilight Zone, which stands maybe as one of the most significant mainstream examples of about speculations about positive futures. And in the recent time, previous to 2020, we were witnessing a growing production of dystopian stories in the mainstream Western context. It was apparent that dystopians were back in fashion. And also in literature, dystopian literature were also on the rise, reaching the level of its golden era. And the golden era was the Cold War time during the 50s. But there is no doubt about this historical importance of dystopian fictions, because it's serving as a defense mechanism and assistance in recognizing the dark words or the dark scenarios or the dark patterns in the future. But we should be aware, and we should not forget that at many places at the planet, especially global south, people still or already lives in the such scenarios coming from the visions from the Western world. And it is not only the global South, but also we are witnessing many scenarios on the edges of the so-called developed world or the Western world. And this popularity of dystopian future scenarios also implied a certain dangers. It could lead people understand catastrophic scenarios as unavoidable, which makes them passive instead of proactive. This domination of dystopian scenarios of the future have a direct impact on the present. It creates a kind of temporal loop which stops any possible radical improvement now. Such Netflixization of the future as a result of this dystopian media production created the future that is linear and predictable. And therefore, it's important to start thinking again about different non-linear futures, not centralized future. This dystopian thinking requires some counterbalance, positive visions of the future. And speculative practice in this context, based on this criticism, hopefully or luckily found a new way by going in the real world, by focusing on own local communities to start a real activities. And new and different approaches showed up. They were closer to the real world, which are communicating big issues to the common people, confronting these global narratives about big technological heroes who will change the world. Doing projects in collaboration with the local community, which use the local tools, technology, and knowledge. Working with concrete methods, tools, and materials for the common citizens, for us. Also in collaboration with the public administration on the large infrastructural projects. Even European Union, EU Commission used speculative design scenario in some of their strategic thinking. So with this also new education approach came here, which tried to combine speculative design practice with more active political role of design in everyday life. And even pioneers of the practice, they move from the futures to reality, from debate to action. They are not interested anymore in just speculation, they want actions. In that context, we started building our approach. The approach we named Mediterranean speculative approach, which is practiced far away from the European urban and technological centers. On the Adriatic, we live basically on the edges of Europe. So our focus of our practice is on implication of global topics in the local context. So how these emergent technological, economical, social, and political changes we could not influence from the edge of the Europe will impact the context of our Mediterranean southeast of Europe. And this approach resulted in a series of works titled Mediterranean Speculative Triology. And we will show you 3 our project in the second part of this workshop as a case studies. And our focus was always how to transfer our project into education. So from 2004, we are running a series of multidisciplinary international workshops dealing with the contemporary design practices. always trying to act in the local context and to do projects within the local context. So we call workshop leaders, designers, educators, and practitioners to come to Split, run the workshop with our students, but not only our students, we invite students from all around Europe. And then we do project which is situated and based in the local context. And as a step forward, based on this, our production practice and this educational practice, we looked at European context to connect with the other practices, we challenge the current trends, trying to overcome the limitation of design, practice, and education. And we started this speculative Edu Erasmus Plus project with the aim to look at the speculative design education in Europe, with goal to improve these fields and design education in general. So we invited partners from the Italy, Portugal, Slovenia, UK Goldsmiths, and Scotland. And we formed a consortium which is running this project for the last more than half years. And since one of our aims of the project was that in reality a lot of mainstream design and design education, it's stuck in this last century modernistic notion of design, which is like design is good, but design also could be evil, that design improves people's lives, but designs also can destroy people's lives. And the design solve problems, but we see on the everyday basis that design produce a lot of problems. So we wanted also to discuss not only speculative design, but design in general, in educational context. And for design education, this task is quite hard. So this line of goals we want to achieve is quite complex. First, we want to move students from this problem solving and marketing perspective. Then we want to bring them critical tools and methods. But at the end, we wanted to generate new concrete social actions in the real world. And we have started to map landscape to bring an overview of contemporary design practice, speculative practice, including a number of practitioners and educators. We conducted more than 50 different interviews and with additional educational activities. We had one workshop in Maribor, which was great. And this is from 2019, summer school in Rome, which the title of the summer school was Neo-Rural Futures. In the time when everyone is dealing with the urban future, we were dealing with the rural future. This workshop was really highly successful workshop, also including the one previous in Maribor. And during our project, we have opened a series of new questions about power and education, about consequences of speculations, of doing speculations, about decolonization of design, and the role of speculation in the real world, and how to bring back this positive, let's say even utopian visions of the future. And now, let's back to the future. What about our present, when we live with disasters now, when speculations became reality, when speculation became a social networks memes, everyday social networks memes, where speculative and future-oriented design practices now becoming even more mainstream. We see a number of scenarios dealing with life after or with pandemic, and speculations is becoming reality. Moreover, these old narratives are back again, that technology will be crucial in our survival in the future. All of this opens a new series of questions for speculative design practice, dealing with past, present, and the future part of the practice. At the first look, if we look back at the legacy of the speculative design practice, there are a number of projects dealing with the dystopian futures, including different kinds of disasters, wars, climate disasters, totalitarian states, technological dystopians, and even diseases. This is a project from Stuart Candy from 2007, which was dealing with a similar scenario which is happening now with the bird flu in eastern countries. But we hear now arguments like we have told you, you didn't prepare, you haven't done anything to avoid this, which has been used in one part of the speculative community. This is another project which is also dealing with mechanics and structure of vaccination in the UK in 2019, even before this, again before this pandemic situation now. But this, we have been, from the community, we have been very critical since those views, like we have told you, could lead in despair, and the state of practice when dystopians became a kind of normality. So we are living in dystopian time, there is no way to change anything at all. But on the other hand, one potentially positive factor that emerged from the current crisis, it is that it showed the fragility of current economic system which is running. Moreover, from this positive side, we see a number of great, efficient, alternative bottom-up methods, projects, initiatives, actions to deal with pandemic. Often coming from the margins, economical and geographical, including collaborative practices like permaculture, food distribution chains, also makers and do-it-yourself communities, community media, and other similar examples. And at the end of this introduction, let's back to these questions. What we have learned and how to use it now or into the future. How to close the loop from the beginning of speculative design to now, how to move this speculative thinking into the real life, how to produce actions. In future, which is more than ever challenging for the speculative practice, when we see these speculative scenarios on everyday basis. So speculative design appeared as a result of this satisfaction with the state of design and design education over many years. And in these 20 years of the practice, we hope that it has created a small foundation of design to move forward, and which is mostly important via education, and could offer some of the insights to help to address these questions. And to say, again, the most important one, how we can educate students for the decades to come. And most of these issues are discussing in our forthcoming speculative edu booklet, which will be present at the end of this month and will be free to download and read. So there you will see some of these, like our reflection of these like questions, I'm just opening here in this like opening part of this presentation. And after this, like in the second part of the workshop, we are going to go to the concrete concrete design practice, design process, how we do speculative practice based on the different case studies. Okay, now we have some time for your comments and questions before we go to the second part of the workshop, which is a bit longer.
Thank you very much, Ivica. This was a brilliant introduction. And as Ivica said, you're now welcome to participate in the discussion. You can, of course, write them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and turn on your microphone and just ask, shoot it away. I think we already have a first one.
Okay, so good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm listening to you from Colombia, and I think we are having a lot of things in common. But I'm wondering if we are trying to deal with this idea of this global myths around design, that design is good. How are you guys dealing with future ethics? I mean, from perspectives such as Harari's, he says that our future ethics cannot be our present ethics, and because, well, all the changes in technology, for instance, are bringing us an absolutely new approach to what we think right now, that our relationship with technology, for example, is doing it right now. So the question is, you're trying to promote this idea of a kind of optimistic future, well, trying to recover it, but at the same time, in this way that Harari proposes, what are you guys doing to try to understand what kind of ethics do we have to work with, as long as I don't know, we could be in a kind of contradiction, as long as we always have thought that design is good, and in this way we could be thinking again that design is good, and if we think that design is good, we are dealing with ethics, basically. I don't know if my question is clear.
It's clearly quite hard. Maybe I will leave this to Oleg. This is like something Oleg likes to think about. Just to start like this discussion.
Hey, yeah, okay. So if I got it right, you're asking on how we are dealing with the global idea of design being good in overall, and about the future ethics, and why or how do we focus it for today to be prepared. The kind of the idea of this speculative or future-oriented design is not as much on focusing on solutions for the future, but to make us rethink about the present. So if you were, as we did with the Life After Tourism project, which I'm sure we'll show in a few minutes, we weren't thinking about as much about how to cope with the future disaster scenarios, but rather on what to do to be prepared for such scenarios today. In that case, in that project, the main point was how we should rather organize ourselves within our communities to collectively battle the oncoming difficulties, such as organize our production, food production, and I don't know, overall city shouldn't be a part of different small units which function either as individuals or as small groups, but rather a larger ecosystem which works better. So in short, the idea behind all these projects is to set up a new ethics for today, not for tomorrow. That's the hope.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I could add like this like educational position we have is a kind of privilege also. So we have a chance also to work with the students, trying to discuss with them about like all these issues you are mentioning here, because also we don't have solutions for everything. But you know, in discussion, this reflection process in the educational process, I think it's very important also to raise this awareness with the students about like these ethical issues, which is changing, and it's going to be really changing in the future. But you know, it's from this like more pessimistic part, we are still struggling with these ethical issues of today, and we have lots of problems with it today, not thinking about tomorrow. So speculative thinking is always thinking about present time when we're thinking about future.
Okay, thank you. We have two more questions. Before I give the floor to Nate, there is one, it was one before in chat from Jamie. He has written, or she has written, I can see the connections between speculative design and futures literacy. Could you elaborate a little bit on how they are related and play together in imagining futures?
But it's like we will talk more about this like in the second part, because speculative about this speculative practice, which is quite an open practice, and there is lots of influences coming from all around, which is related to this practice. So I can mention just like this. More film-orientated science fiction stuff and the future thinking and this fictional speculation, but it's basically it is very strongly related to the literature, to the some of these like major science fiction authors. There is like one of the most important basics or inspiration for this practice, of course. So like using some of the outcomes of the speculative project could be like a short story, which is like just a story which is present or which is like communicate the project. So this could be also one of the outcomes of the project.
So Nate just wrote in the chat that he raised his hand by mistake. Any other questions? Okay, yes. We have from Mariam. We are seeing that mediums like architecture, product design are envisioning the future via parametric design and products. In what way will it help in solving the problems of the present, like better work offices, for example, or better food alternatives, and now more than ever in this pandemic?
Oleg.
The difficult ones. I have no idea. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I mean, it depends on the complexity of the AI and how it's trained and so on. Right? It depends on how the algorithms work to interpret, to find solutions for the metrics you for the input you do. I guess
I'm always aware of this. You know, like as I said before, like this overproducting of technology, especially now. You know, when we are like living in time when you see that these narratives that technology will be crucial in our future survival. So like now we are going, there are like a huge production of different technological solutions for the future. This question mentioned this like future office working, which is one of the big issues now in this pandemic time. But I'm really aware of this like overproduction of this technological / design solution, and which is at the end maybe will be just not problem solving, but you know, problem raising.
Okay, the questions are now just really popping in. I have one from Jon. Does there have to be a division between affirmative and speculative design? Isn't there also supposed to be an initiative for a transition? How can speculative design better influence the already established design practice of today?
It doesn't have to be. It's just like speculative design came as a kind of new practice, as a reaction or as a reflection to, let's say, this affirmative or traditional design. But basically, we think that every design should be like critical, reflexive, speculative, future-oriented. It's just like it was just terminology as a kind of statement that people wanted to do some different kind of design, not this kind of design, but basically the problem was before because this, let's say, traditional design end up in the different direction from this design we wanted to have it. So that's like both design, or say all design, have to be reflexive, critical, future intended, and whatever. So it's just now it's now we are talking about this different kind of design, just to make critiques to this like way where modernistic or high modernistic vision of design end up.
Okay. Camila, she has written, hi, I wanted to ask if you see danger of speculative design going from old dystopian visions to current demand for hope in design field, as e.g. Lee Edelkart's Hope Forum. It's just my observation that with each critical, oops, just a second, because one more just popped in. With each critical commentary, there is a must give some hope demand at the moment, and it's like jumping from one unconstructive extreme to another.
It's, of course, I have mentioned in many slides here that this like dystopian visions, or this like extremely critical visions without any like constructive elements or some guides what to do now, they are really like dangerous, and I'm really I don't see anything good in this kind of design. So in this like critique of this speculative design, which I showed in this second part of the presentation, there is a strong critiques against this kind of design. I think Oleg could add something.
I haven't got much to add.
Okay, before we go to the break, I suggest we have 3 more and then a short break. So the next one is from Doman. How does the actual health crisis addresses the future scenario proposals? From my point of view, it has an impact no one could really predict in such a scale. Do we have tools and competences to speculate similar global events?
But speculative design, it's not something which is predict future. We can only just trying to guess, to anticipate, and bring out different scenarios to discuss, and also trying to find which kind of scenario could be like let's say the best one, or maybe it's preferable one, and scenario where in which we can do something to make it happen. So we don't know the future. We can just show different scenarios, talk about, discuss, and try to see how we can achieve one of these like preferable scenario. And also for whom is preferable, you know, it's preferable for pharmaceutical industry, for the citizens, or for the government. So this also questions we want to raise in our practice.
I mean, speculative design and design can kind of try to guess what the implications of designed objects and services might be, but there are other people who, or other fields that are better at predicting this, or wider events such as, I know, epidemic, what are they called, experts, or medical people from medicine who can predict on how pandemic might occur, and sociologists and psychologists who might predict on how it could impact us.
And also, yes, yeah. Oleg, great.
No,
and there is also, okay, so there is also great project which is happening in, or which happened in this collaboration with the different scientists, which are experts in the field, with the speculative designer who can just like work with them to present these different possible scenarios.
Yeah. So you just design a way of communicating it to the broader public.
Okay, brilliant. Welcome back to all. We will continue now with the second part of our event. Ivica, Oleg, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. As I said before, this second part, we are going deep into approach, methods, and tools. We have selected case study from this speculative edu community with our case studies and with this discussion and questions and answer sessions at the end. And as we stressed before, design practitioners involved in speculative methods, approaches, and tools are becoming more critical toward themselves and trying to look beyond the gallery space and to engage with the communities to produce lasting and effective outcomes. And we will start to look, or we look at the case studies that are the part of the speculative edu community to bring to the foreground the tensions that practitioners and design students navigate, and they are more or less explicitly addressed. So we have identified the common tensions addressed by the practitioners as a strategies to better conceptualize, deploy, and evaluate speculative design and related design practices, but also to address these debates or critiques that surround speculative practice. So these tensions we choose or we detect from the practice, it's illustrated. Each tension is illustrated with the scope as a kind of extent to which tension manifests itself. And I will present you with a related case study. And of course, there is other tensions that we did not address. We just choose the most visible 8 tensions, which we see in the speculative practice and education today. But there is also not linear, because often designers address more than one single tensions in their design process and outcomes. So also some of these examples we choose could be placed in a different category than proposed one. But we have tried to choose like the most representative case study for each of these tensions, which we use to try to explain speculative design process. And this is not proposed as a guide or a recipe. It's something like a linear process, but it's more like a kind of one more aid to the practice of speculative design. And cases presented here are meant to inspire and provide sense of orientation or a place to start from in the practice. Because I will quote here I will present here a quote from one of our interviews: "There is no prescriptive way to do speculative design." So let's think about first tension. We have here, which is tension, we call it exclusion, with the scope from human to kind. This tension reflects how all people don't share the same experience of inclusion and access with the society. So some groups of people are excluded from the participation in often crucial activities and discourse. So we see selected study we are going to present here. It's the illegal town plan from real wells, and also as an extension of this project is just outgoing in Murska Sobota in Slovenia from Matt Ward and Jimmy Loiseau from UK. And intention of this project was to reactivate communities, to give them power back, to explore visions of new illegal town plan. Project developed a strategy, ideas and possibilities with people from the towns with uncertain futures. So this fictional town plan may be used in this project as a platform, working structure to assemble and represent marginal voices and to give them power to think about future. Some of the methods, tools, and approaches employed in this project are: in this participative project, authors used films, drawings, photography, town planning documents, and plots to raise these collective hopes and dreams of communities, as well as architecture to develop alternative master plan. Every design excludes to higher or lesser degree someone, more and less directly. So therefore, it's highly important that designers consider how to negotiate exclusion as a tension here during the process. How designers produce design that bring to the fore the viewpoints of those that have been underrepresented in the process of future building. Second tension, it's engagement with the scope from participant to witness. This one is very important for the speculative practice. And this tension deals with the consideration of the public within the spectrum from detached observer to engaged participant. So this tension raises the questions like, should people be active part of the design process or just visitors in the gallery, or should the audience passively observe? And case story we choose here, it's big games for exploring the future, which is game for exploring how diversity in technology, policy, society, and ecology leads to the rich futures. It can be used in both teaching and general play sessions with the public. To respond issues in this project, explaining artificial intelligence and machine learning, their benefits and drawbacks, or to educate people about how this potentially disruptive technology could transform society in one way or another. Some of the methods, tools, approaches employed here are role-playing and improvisational theater techniques, collaborative knowledge building, day-in-life design stories, or persona-like entities, which they use in this project or game. So this project or tensions illustrate how one can address the role of audience as a voyeur, protagonist, and observer. And authors designed this game as a tool for reflection, criticism, and, which is mostly important, active engagement of the audience. Third tension, with name use, have its scope from prop to product. So tensions focus on the capacity of the object in the creation of the story. So it looks if design object function as a just prop to help the structure of the story and supporting the script, or as a real product, creating narratives with the person use that object in real. So case study we choose here, it's one classical speculative design project, the toaster project from 2009, which was an attempt to make electric toaster from the scratch, from the ground up. So author, he started from the raw materials from abandoned mines and processing everything at home, he was forming a product that is usually sells for around few euros in the market. And at the end, toaster costed, after the 9 months of working process, toaster costed more than £1,000 in production. And some of the methods, tools, approaches which was employed in this toaster project are the construction, making the process in a story. He produced book at the end, and exploration, we are attempting the impossible, but mostly with the humor as a carrier way during the whole project. This project deals with the adoption of design as a part of people's everyday lives, about this domestication of technology. And it invites the audience and the author during his process to reflect on the notion of embodiment. It is focused on the physical engagement through use as a tension here, as a tension of use. For tension, it's completion with the scope from the process to outcome. This tension addresses the point at which designers consider the design process has been accomplished, as a sketch, as a prototype, or as a finished product. And some design insist on a clear and polished and detailed material outcomes, while others focusing on producing the tools, manuals that would open and share and make possibilities for someone else to reenactment of the design process in the future. And the case study we are showing here, it's a Newton machine project from 2018, which was a kind of design manual and prototype for energy storage device made with the local community using their tools, spare parts, and experience, with aim to get speculative design out of the gallery into the real life, to produce tangible community outcomes, and to turn these positive aspects of fiction into fact. And some of the methods, tools, approaches authors applied in the Newton machine are design solutions that are local, not universal, design made of people and places, and community making storytelling machine. This tension implicitly refers the stage of design process where the purpose of the project has been accomplished. This project reflects on the importance of making and the role of learning. Tension number 5, it's again with the scope learn, earn. So what are the motivations that drive design process and the goals the designers hope to reach? Is it the designer or audience who benefit from the process or from the design or from the outcome? Is the project commercial or research effort? Are there clients? And what is the role of the money in the project? And select a case study, it's a man in an interior. So Pentopicon Studio was invited to conduct a foresight study exploring new future perspectives on home, office, and the world of interior design and design fairs. So the research outcomes of this study was embodiment in a fictional trade fair experience. And some of the methods employed here, it was a design of fictional speculative startups of the future, which was presented as if real on the trade fair with their own brand product and services, as an instrument for debate on the future. So be a collection of fictional new businesses. Exhibition visitors consider the implication of those products and services and concepts if and when they arrived on the market. So this project or tension addresses the question on the benefits from the design and how transparent it is for us. Sixth tension is perspective, with the scope from local to global. This tension focuses on the implication of design process in relation to the geographical context in which it happens. Where was design project developed? Which places or communities does a design address? Case study which for us represents this tension is speculative development of Bratislava, which used speculative design as a critique in the context of controversial local urban development. For the most locals, it is hard to imagine how new districts will look like in the future, which are composed of various projects from the different companies. So project is based on the critique of the relationship between capital-driven visions and the reality. Let's mention some of the approaches, tools, and methods applied in these projects. They use postcards from the future. They use virtual reality experiences. They use so-called hyper-unrealistic speculative bricolage. They use also manipulative nature of advertising. So project is concerned with really micro-local urban development, like one neighborhood in Bratislava, and with the tension to reflect the physical and cultural context where designers were based when producing speculative tensions. Tension number 7 deals with time, with the scope, from past to the future. So design, it may address the past as a counterfactual stories, or present, or as alternative present, or the future as a vision. So when and by whom was this design project development or developed? Is this design project a vision of the future, and of whose future? And whose future? Case study I'm showing here, it's Mangala for All, which is reflexive ethnographic performance based on the Indian space orbiting. It's a focus on the India spacecraft which is orbiting Mars, and it was produced by Superflux Studio. And the aim of the project was to generate narratives. So the small-scale versions of this Mars probe has been produced to generate a more complex and fine-grained understanding of the people relationship with the Indian space program. And some of the methods, tools, approaches used here. We see here this spacecraft small-scale replicas, and also reflexive ethnography with the field studies was conducted during the project, with lots of interviews which generated myths and stories. So project investigates questions around power, science, progress, development, the traditional Indian innovation heritage also, and use this tension and balancing with the past, the heritage, with the present time and the future visions. And the last tension we are presenting here, we have extracted for the speculative design practice, its inclusion with the scope from non-human to human. This tension looks at the involvement of other than human perspectives, which is questioning the question, which type of life takes priority? Can non-humans participate in design process? Do non-humans design? To what extent do humans and non-humans design each other? Case study we are presenting here, it's a case study from our workshop in Maribor from 2019. And the name of the project is the one with the programmable friend, which is set in the near future where automation has become commonplace, and the project is dealing with new social realities of living with robots. Themes such as robot rights, employment, and love has been explored in this project. And some of the methods, tools, approaches used here. The 1919 TV sitcom Friends was used as a format to discuss the future. So authors became the script writers. They were writing a Friends sitcom episode, one episode of the sitcom, for thinking about or to experiment with this non-normative version of this popular sitcom. And it was realized as in the live reading performance at the end of the project. So this project and this tension investigates the agency of other than humans entities, such as artificial beings, and the role they play in a different context. It shows the complexity that arises from inclusion of non-human into human affairs. And now I will show you our 3 projects, and we are going to discuss the process, the tensions, the motivations, the methods and tools in our approach. And I will start with our classical speculative design project. I will explain later why I say classical, from 2014. And the theme of the project of this work was a smart city, because at that time it was produced in the context of the European research project dealing with future technology in our urban environment. So it is a near future story. The name of the project is Eutropia. It is a near future story based on the Mediterranean tradition of city-states. Eutropia, the city, it's a city which economical and political status are based on the trade of the citizens' private informations. So this new information-based economy gives independence and welfare to all the citizens. So scenario is questioning, what about privacy in this welfare city? Is it an ideological misconception from the last century, or just basic human need? So city developed a state-of-the-art infrastructure for collecting data, and citizens voluntarily cooperate to assure a constant flow or sailing of information. So I will show you a video which is presenting this work. Okay, I will stop here because we don't have time to show like the whole version. So basically, speculative concept was developed primarily with this video as a mean of communication, but also with these artifacts and costumes, which are not only stage props designed for this video. They are basically speculative objects and artifacts, so-called diegetic prototypes, which contribute to the believability of the whole scenario or the story and stimulate discussion. So this project was at the end presented in the gallery space with all of these objects we used in the video. So it is kind of classical, I would say, one-dimensional speculative project. It is a very author-centered project with no any kind of participation from the public audience, experts, or anyone else. So our motivation comes from the context of this outgoing project, which was dealing with the smart city and how this will reflect in our local context. And the research was done just within the project, in really academic context, without any connection with the real people, experts, and anyone else from the local context. And the concept was developed with this background story, with a video and this mentioned with diegetic prototypes I mentioned before. And it was communicated in the gallery space. And as outcomes from this project, it was just focused on raising awareness to generate discussion with the general public. What is going to be our future life in this smart city environment? And if we look at the most visible tensions here, I just choose some of these tensions. For example, for engagement, public here is just witness in the gallery space. For use, we have these diegetic prototypes, not real products. For completion, we were focused on the outcome as a video and objects and the gallery presentation. And from the perspective, it is local, very local project. It is situated in this specific Mediterranean context. Second project is from 2017, and it's focused on automation of the work and labor in the local context. So automation was one of the big issues, started to be really one of the big topic in 2017. So we look at our local context, and we focused on the automation of something which is really specific for our local context, automation of the cruising sailboats. So we in this project we are speculating how automation will change the related occupations. So we went to the Split Harbor's master office, and we collected data, and we found that number of the skippers were growing exponentially, and that is becoming one of the most popular occupation in our area. This is for the whole Adriatic Sea, just Croatian part of the Adriatic Sea. And this project brings near future story about the last skipper, once romantic and one of the most popular occupation, which came to extinction by automated sailing boats. I will show the teaser of the project.
Bude interesantni ljudi. Mislim, to je kao posao interesantan.
Umjesto da ti putuješ po svijetu i upoznaš ljudi dolaze se upoznavati s tebom i još dobiješ neku vjeru.
I to je vrlo interesantno. Ovo zadnje.
Pa već danas postoji intencija da posada na pogotovo velikim trgovačkim brodovima zapravo samo nadgleda rad elektronike, praktički elektronika upravlja brodom veći dio plovidbe od isplovljavanja do uplovljavanja u luku.
osnovno moje mišljenje je da skipera ne može niko zamijeniti. Nijedan stroj, nijedan, ja znam, tehničko dostignuće. Neko tu uvijek mora biti prisutan.
Pa za očekivati da bi eventualni ljudi na brodu samo mogli uživati u plovidbi dok bi cijeli posao za njih obavila elektronika.
Ne, meni to nije to. Ne. Ja mislim da to nije to.
Ne, toliko daleko ne možemo razmišljati. Mislim, skipper vjerojatno neće umriti. On će mora biti na brodu. On će mora biti, šta ja znam, na letilici. Danas, sutra, šta ja znam, neko će mora s tim. Ljudski faktor neće biti isključen u nijekom slučaju.
Računalo se ne umara, računalo u proračunu ne griješi i računalo uvijek igra na sigurno. Čovjek je sklon i umaranju, ali čovjek je sklon i riskiranju, što računalo nikad neće biti. Kada bi računalo bilo dovoljno sigurno da se u nijednom trenutku neće doći do nekog poremećaja u radu računala, onda bi vjerojatno bilo sigurnije od ljudske posade i za očekivati je da na neke duge pruge da će računalo moći sigurnije upravljati brodom od čovjeka.
A mislim, osim toga, skipper, uz to što je skipper, ako ima malo afiniteta za neke druge stvari, kad je s gostima tipa skočiti umore, izvaditi hobotnicu i takve neke stvari.
Viškuvake.
To je već to, niti jedan stroj neće moći napraviti.
Evo se i Toma broda automatizirala se i Filomena. A šta ti fali ovako? Bolje ti je s menom, nije ti dosadno. Ja ne dam ja tebe nikome. A ko zna li radi ova kamera? Viće me kapetanija gleda, evo ako me gleda, evo da vidimo da radi, evo izgleda da radi. Evo moramo voditi dnevnik, pratiti sve živo i zapisivati u dnevnik, jer to radi kapetanije moramo sve, jer me oni gledaju, moramo to paziti, sve da bude tip top. Di su sad svi oni moji skiperi? Stoje u kancelarijama, uredima, glume menadžere, bukiraju, ukrcavaju putnike, gledaju im sigurnost, a makinje nam voze brode. Tili su snimi moj glas, ali nisam ja tija. Stroj može imat sva znanja, ali nema dušu kao i ja.
Okay, we stop here. This project was shown at Vienna Biennale as a part of the really nice exhibition, How We Will Work. And there it was presented as a kind of anthropological archive, as a document of the occupations from the past. So we had the video documentary and this first part, and then this fictional part with this last skipper. We had this boat as used to be before automatization, and we had some of the photos from the skipper's private collection, spending their beautiful times with their guests on this cruising during the cruising time. And this project, its story, aesthetics and object raised an intensive discussion, including different stakeholders, both public and expert, how it will look the future of this occupation in the future. And we see this work as a step forward from the work from this Eutropia project. This one was really based on the field work and the research with the stakeholders, with the skippers. And as a motivation, as I said before, we addressed this omnipresent technical issue or big topic of automatization or automation and how it will reflect in local context in the future. So we conducted research with stakeholders and experts in this, like in Harbour's office, and we talk with these peoples who are doing people's skippers. And this concept was developed as a background story with these real interviews, and this also fictional story presenting in the form of this video. And we present it again in the gallery space at the end. So this time outcomes was not just raising awareness and discussion in general public, but because also end up in the mainstream media. But what was the most important for us was this, like this interaction with the skipper during this research phase, when they really like starting to think about what is going to be with their occupation in the future. And let's look some of the most visible tensions here. For exclusion, this is again, the project is focused on the margins, on the local community, which has not power to change. They have to adapt in the future. For engagement, this time we were doing research with participation with the stakeholders or skippers. From the perspective, local context, local people again, and as a time tension, we are trying to connect past tradition of this occupation, present context of the tourism and growing of this occupation, and with the future projection. And the last project in this line, it's our last project from 2018, which is focused on the climate changes and the Adriatic Sea. As we all witnessed in the last few years, Adriatic Sea achieved the highest sea temperature ever in the history and the highest air temperature ever in the history. So this project intended to provide possible alternative scenarios to expected extreme climate futures. And it offers alternative scenarios to prepare us for the possible post-apocalyptic Mediterranean. But also, as a step forward, we wanted to offer a concrete tools, techniques, and mechanism to help individuals and communities in rebuilding their lives after disaster, to provide a kind of new hope in the new beginning. This story is situated in 2055, the second half of the 21st century, when global climate changes resulted in extreme changes of life and economic condition in the eastern part of the Adriatic. So Split, as a historical city, used to be a very important industrial center, mostly known for its large shipyard. But through the transition time, in the end of the last and the first quarter of this century, it became a city with economy entirely relied on the tourism. And slowly, with disaster, tourism as the most important economic sector just disappeared completely. And migration has started with the collapse of tourism. So number of citizens fled toward the inland and the northern part of the Europe. So those who stayed tried to use sea level rising and the penetration of seawater inside the historical city core as a kind of opportunity for the future, as a new hope. So historical city centers are becoming places for new forms of food production. So the Central Asian Square in Split becomes one of the city pools for the new agriculture, or new mariculture to be precise, for extremely resistant sea organisms, unicellular algae, brine shrimps, and sea anemones. And surrounding buildings are used for production, drying, preserving, packaging, and preparing for distribution. Citizens are now organized in the small cooperatives. And we started our investigation in the local context in a collaboration with the really famous Institute of Sea Studies and Fisheries here in Split. So we worked together with the scientists in developing of these background scenarios. And we carried research together to find resistant organisms, to work on setup of this installation with algae, shrimps, and anemones, which forms a kind of food chain or cycle. So we cultivated algae by using minerals and lights, which served as a food for the brine shrimps, which we use as a food for the sea anemones. All of these three sea species are extremely resistant to the possible extreme climate changes. And after 1 month, we achieved growth of all species. So it was like it was working as a closed, self-sustainable cycle. So we transfer all in the gallery space, and the chefs from the local cooks associations as the partners prepared and demonstrated new food potentials of the mariculture of the near future. So they prepare a sea anemone risotto, and they cooked, which was cooked at exhibition openings. During the exhibition, the experts from the Institute organized an educational workshop for the students and high school pupils about practical aspects of cultivation of marine organisms for food and other products. And also we had a workshop with the small kids about life after disaster, possible disaster in our town. And after 1 month of another grow in the gallery, all the newborn anemones has been returned back at the sea at the same spot where we collected them. And videos covering the whole process, I will just show you the part of it.
heterogene su u smislu načina života, znači od autotrofnih do
Da, samo šta imate možda ženka diploid, možda više kao ženka je samo tetraploid i ono drugačije ide razvoj.
Okay, now we stop here. We also, what was really important for us, we publish a do-it-yourself guide for building this mariculture in print and online version with this additional and traditional and all new recipes with anemone, so everyone can reconstruct this mariculture by yourself. And we see these projects as another step forward from this previous project I show you with really concrete outcomes. So as a motivation, we started with really personal drive or experience with climate, what is going to be about future, what is going to be about our future. And we conducted this research with experts in this really participatory project. We worked together in this scenario. We worked together on this like building of this like mariculture installation or setup. So as a concept, we started this background story. We produced this mock-up of this central square of the city, and we produced this concrete object which we presented in the gallery space. As outcomes, of course, we generated discussion with experts and general public, but we also produced a kind of concrete working system with this do-it-yourself manual for the possible future use. And if we look at the most visible tensions here, for example, for exclusion, again, we will focus on the margins, so on the really like one personal stories. And for the engagement in participatory process with the experts and gallery public, it's important that we have participatory process with expert, which is really just inclusion, and then also this like gallery public situation. For use, we produce really like working products, which was really something important for us. And as completion, we were focused on outcome as a project and also this do-it-yourself manual. And again, we try to look at to connect this past tradition with the present context of the tourism in the context of the future scenario. And at the end of this today's session, I will try to summarize some of these findings we found around speculative or inside the speculative edu project. So speculative and related design or designers should consider the complexity of the process. Complexity that is a consequence of multiple and sometimes contradictory tensions that designers more and less explicitly address. And also, speculative and related design employs methods, approaches, and tools. They are shared with all the other design, and not only design disciplines. So as we try to highlight when presenting these themes and tensions, there is no right or wrong. Or better to say, right and wrong are not appropriate terms to decide which methods to use in design process. Rarely there is a method which is universally valid, regardless the context of the context, designer, and audience. It is likely that there are no methods for speculative design in general, but methods for particular context and requirement of particular design. So in defining the methods, this process of defining the methods, it is a crucial part of design ability to critically engage with the people and the context where design happens. With this reflexive and creative engagement with the multiplicity of design methods, tools, and approaches. To conclude, speculative approach design can be primarily seen as an attitude or position rather than a traditionally defined methodology. But however, we can still point some of the distinctive characteristics of the approach or try to determine a kind of basic framework. So we end up to this, like recently, we end up to this diagram, which is showing that speculative design continuously interact with other related practices, fields, and disciplines. And here we have started with this like classical double diamond design process diagram, which is in the speculative practice constantly distorting, depends on the different tensions and tools and methods used. So speculative practice use any methods and tools and approach that is accessible and appropriate at a given moment. For instance, it is legitimately to use tools, techniques, instruments, methods, genres, and concepts such as fictional narratives, film language, screenplay, storyboards, user testing, interviews, questionnaire, games, but also some media and pop culture phenomena such as candid camera, elevator pitch, observational comedy, stand-up, anything which is considered suitable at a given moment, which was possible to see in some of the case studies I presented here. So I will finish, or we will finish with this quote from Nicholas Nova from the speculative design interview. So thank you. And now we have time to discuss more this second part of this today event.
Brilliant. Ivica, thank you very much for the intriguing presentation. As before, you are all welcome to participate in the discussion. Maybe this time to have a more plurality of voices, you can unmute yourself and ask questions directly.
Yes, would be nice to see.
Would be nice. Yeah, and to hear you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
go ahead.
Well, yeah, just wanted to thank you all for the presentations and the provocative images and concepts that you presented here. I mean, what I asked was not just a simple question. I mean, there are frameworks that are in play here that some of them are aligned, some of them are touch different parts of whatever we want to do, to design, to solve, to present, to see, to observe. And the whole workshop was very illuminating in that regard. So thank you all.
I just would like to add that, like, this diagram I'm showing here was like basically done this night, and it's like it's starting from some sketches. We are working on it like for a long time. So first sketch of this diagram was made in 2014, I think, as a part of our first booklet called Introduction to the Speculative Design Practice, and it's basically constantly evolving and trying to show that this process, it's not like a linear, not like easy to explain, and that is a kind of open approach, which we find that is one of the really like important, distinctive or positive quality of this approach, that it's not closed and it's not really like shaped, and that it's something which is evolving, and it is something which is also, as we discussed before, could be like generalized, or could be like transferred to the whole design thinking, not just the speculative design thinking. And there was like inside the project like really long-lasting discussion about this like method, tools, approach is something really like hard to define, and something but on the other hand, there is something which people always asking, well, give me something, you know, like a guideline how I can do speculative design. It's not possible to give it, because it's also you have to have some kind of knowledge coming from your discipline. Is it like some other kind of design? Is it architecture? Is it something else from this creative or process? And then you employ some of these methods, tools, and techniques you already learned from your previous educational process, and you applied here, and then we got, I think, the best results, because I think it's speculative practice. It's a kind of still upgrade to your previous design, art, architecture, I don't know, any kind of science education from before.
We have a few more questions. Christian, would you like to unmute yourself and maybe ask yourself the question?
Okay, do you hear me there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Ivica, for your kind presentation. Well, in the same line that I was asking a few minutes ago, I would like to know what is the role that hope has been leading in your framework and in the cases you've studied. I mean, hope as an ethical category, I found it problematic in the way that we try to. I understand absolutely what you said before, that this approach is not trying to bring new futures, in fact, no? But new approaches to future, and of course, a new approach to present. So for me, it has been problematic. I'm a teacher here in Colombia, and teaching around hope makes me think that there is an intrinsical link between the way that we've been doing design, conventionally speaking, and the way that in the same way design has been providing people an imaginary of a good future. No? So hope for you in your framework, is it problematic, or is the opposite something that is very important to make people more engaged to this kind of project?
Yeah, that's great questions, and it's also, as I said before, when I was presenting this kind of temporal loop, you know, when we see everywhere around us, you know, this like dystopian visions of future, and at some moment we are all starting to produce all these dystopian visions of future without like any kind of hope. That's something which is really a big issue, not only for designers but for all of us. I think one of these possible that's also like many times, let's say during the educational process, I don't have a hope, but I think like giving a chance to students, or give them voice to develop their possible scenarios. Sometimes really they bring me sometimes hope, sometimes like more frustration. But I think giving them chance to present their hopes could be one of the possible solutions to this, like our personal problems with the hope, because as I said before, like I think these participatory elements of including participatory design tools, method, and approaches in the speculative design could be one of the possible ways or hopes for the speculative design going out of this like dystopian, negative, or future visions we constantly see around us. But I think Oleg could also add something, because he's more pessimistic than me. I'm trying always to put this like a human-centered element. You know, sometimes I really even I'm not like convinced that this is like something here, but then always something then whatever we make at the end, people will just again destroy everything or whatever. So it's really hard. Oleg.
I won't say that hope plays an important, if any, role in our projects or in how we go about with teaching it to the students. It's more about trying to stay alive, I guess, more than anything. It's not about hoping for the better future, but rather to think of possible solutions, not solution, to prepare ourselves to respond better and more quickly to what the future brings. Hope is the worst scourge sent by Zeus to Pandora. That's what we usually try to avoid, would be my answer.
But I would like to add that it's also a question of this position of the speculative practice also, because as you said, you are living in Colombia, as you said, as I remember, it's different to think about future in Colombia than in, I don't know, in UK, for example, or
Croatia.
I'm talking about even before pandemic time. So also Croatia, the place where we are living, we are basically at we see us at the edge of the Europe. So our hope, it's not the same hope for someone who is coming from the more developed Western position. So in education, there is always problem with. I had this presentation in India, and people ask me in India, okay, it's great, you're talking about critical approach and reflective and so on, which is great, but our students need basic tools to survive on the market in their real everyday life. So this is something I always like to stress. It's not the same like teach speculative design. It's some of the the best European art schools where people where you have the best students who can be reflective at the end, also working in the best studios around and make it for their lives. Then to teach in some places like also it's Croatia, when also our students first ask, give me some tools. I would like to work in the local startup and to do some IT great stuff and to earn money. And then maybe I could be critical, but this is not important now. So it's really a big issue for us.
True, or as Christian said, and usually hope is framed in the Western development ontology. Okay, we have two more questions. One was actually, and one a side question is because some people had to go already, and I'm not sure if, of course, they will probably email you later on to discuss more. So I'm sure you're open for it. So I would like to ask Dora to pose her questions if it's possible, or I will read it if she's not here anymore.
I'm here.
Oh, brilliant.
So I was interested if you maybe recorded or collected some direct feedback from these visitors and participants in the workshop in the Sea Cultures projects that you presented last. And was the feedback more oriented in I'm more interested about the change of their awareness about the climate issue, or maybe the change of hopefulness about the issue?
Oleg.
Yeah, I'm. People are pretty much aware of the climate change, at least people with whom we talked about at the exhibition. It's more about the responses were, the feedback was more in line of how much we forgot of our past or how do you say it?
Heritage, skills.
Yeah,
and,
exactly. So how our predecessors used to cope with the elements and everyday life, and how those things, those skills are very important in the present as well as in the future. So for instance, like eating the sea anemones was part of our culture, which is gone today. The same goes for, so for a lot of things which are which used to be produced in rural or traditional way, which are more, in a way, are more sustainable.
And that's the direction we are going with our next project. Since we finished this Speculative Edu project, we're gonna have more time to produce something like a new project for us. And it started from this project with sea anemones and this mariculture. We're starting to be more interested in this all the lost knowledge regarding our interaction with the nature, and also we started to study this self-sustainability communities around here around islands here and the inland in Croatia. We started to study all cooperatives organization, which was really important in this Adriatic part, not only Croatia but the whole coast. So, and also which happened in this pandemic situation, we saw that all this bottom-up self-organized activistic group, really responded in the more in the faster, better, and well-organized way the current catastrophic situation. So this is kind of stuff we are starting to be interesting, and we are trying to study, and we are going to present in the future as a kind in our future work as a kind of possible way to struggle with the disasters. And one critique to our this last work, this sea anemones, what we want to do better, it's that one of these critiques for the speculative practice was starting from disaster as a starting point, as a kind of salvation for humanity. And we wanted to do something which is more focused in the present and try to act before disaster, not after disaster. And that's the way where we are going this our next project as a kind also of development of the speculative practice to be more focused on the present and the real actions to achieve preferable futures.
Okay, we have two more questions, and we will conclude with those two because we are almost at the end of our time. The first one is from Petra. Petra, are you here?
Yes, thank you very much. Hi, Ivica. I just wondered, in the context of, we have a lot of students here, and I think this speculative design practice or learning about it, I think it can involve a lot of other skills. I just wonder if you were thinking what, in your opinion, would be the most valuable personal characteristics in addition to professional skills of a person who wants to get involved in speculative design or who can learn something about this through speculative design. Thank you.
Oleg, I think this is for you.
I have no idea. I mean, perhaps willingness to admit you might be wrong about stuff and open to resolving the mistakes you made throughout your process, or the quote unquote damage your projects might do.
I think there are as many of these critiques of the speculative design stress. I think it should be all which is all skills which is skills for the good designer in general. It's but mostly this to be critical and reflective to your process. I think it's extremely important if you want to do this practice in the right way, but not this practice general design in general, I would add.
And the last question goes to Sarah. Sarah, are you here?
Yeah, hi, I'm here.
Hi, Sarah.
Well, thank you for everything, for a great presentation and this discussion. Yes, well, my question is, I see this great potential of speculative design in giving voice to those unheard, and most importantly, maybe to nature as our environment and silent absorber of our production activities. Is this a real moral imperative for our future design, and or you think this is naive way of thinking, and or is it possible to see political transformation in our future and that leads to a truly ecological future? What do you think?
Oleg is going to say that it's naive, but I will try to find I will try to find a kind of hope here. It's really hard to find the hope, and I will go just again in general. So when someone asks me, is it like how you have to be like ethical, reflexive in design processes? If we are all reflective and critical in our own practices, which is not design, which is like doing anything you are doing, like it's more like from the citizen-based level, we can do and we can change something from the bottom up. I think there is still possibility, there is still way to change something, but I see it from this bottom up level, from everyday life. And I see that education, it's one of the most important channels and possibilities. Not talking about like a master degree speculative design stuff, but like from the kindergarten, elementary school, that is something which is in many countries, especially in the places where we are coming, it's really totally broken, totally devastated, and this kind of education, it's not something which bring people with the critical thinking, any kind of reflexive thinking, and that's something which we are struggling every day, like at our like university level with the students which are coming, which is really like sad. And I think there is still hope, but via bottom-up initiatives, via education, sometimes it doesn't have to be like this formal education, like events like this one and some like ad hoc workshops, informal education. I think they are all great channels to do something like this. Like if you want to add something. Pessimistic at the end.
My stance would be that this is a moral imperative. Was a moral imperative for design from the beginning of design, since Bauhaus, if not even earlier, and in the last 50-60 years from Papanek to Rams, and they both are valid points which do argue for ethical design. But during the last 50 years, it seems to go astray a bit. So I think that the experience of the last 50 years should make us revisit in a different light the principles they set up. So it should be for design from the beginning to the future. It should always be. And if it is a naive way of thinking, I don't know. I have no stance on that. Or do you see a possible future in the political information that leads to true regret? I personally don't, but let's see.
I'm not sure if, because the time is up, but there is one more question. It's always is one more question. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Would you like to accept it? Is it okay for you?
Okay.
Okay, Gaia, so you're really the last one. Are you still here, Gaia?
Hi, sorry.
Okay.
About to go for a meeting, so I was not in the same room. But yes, I can read it. So I was wondering, as I was kind of taking part in a similar kind of future thinking program, design program, and like my biggest struggle was when I was coming out that like locally in Slovenia, I didn't really find a working environment that would support like my learnings. And one of the things I found really important is that, I don't know, this sort of methods and ways of working start to be communicated with local decision makers, or either like what I think like could benefit a lot students was also to kind of talk about self-organization techniques so they could basically start up their own practices. So I was wondering if you are working along those lines as well, or if you have any comments around that.
Not really. Like most of the projects which we show here, like our project, they are coming, you know, from like some kind of, you know, personal or need to do something, to act in any way. And collaboration we had are mostly collaboration, you know, with the scientist researcher or with some, you know, bottom-up organization. But unfortunately, we didn't have any kind of, you know, like more complex project which includes, you know, some, you know, of like decisions makers or some like more structured organization. This is something which is really like still not was like case in our experience. But there are some projects I just mentioned in the beginning, some of these projects which are really like successful and connected with the local community. You can find some of this at our Speculative website with the case studies, which is really successful project which was dealing with local urban development and stuff like this, which includes a speculative practice with participatory practices, which I really like.
So this brings us to the end. Thank you again, Ivica and Oleg, for an intriguing lectures and discussion. Thank you all for joining in. This time I will wrap up with a quote by the American-Canadian speculative fiction writer and essayist William Gibson from his novel Pattern Recognition. The future is there, looking back at us, trying to make sense of the fiction we will have become. Many thanks to everyone and have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thank you for coming, and it was really like nice discussion, and it was nice to hear your feedback on this stuff. We are still developing at the moment, and in 2 days there's going to be another Speculative Edo event. You can find it on our like social networks, where you can, when there will be like lots of authors of the some of these case studies I showed here. They will be presenting their job with their work with some nice discussion, and end of the month we are going to have like our final event, and where we are going to present the stuff from the booklet we are now working on it.
Yeah, brilliant, great news. Thank you very much.